Now, it might be a little hard to tell, but if you look at your body, you will be able to still see that one side is bigger. This is the butt side. So you're going to take the smaller side and you're going to use pins or stitch markers, whatever you have to stitch or to pin. So I have my curve that goes along the front edge of the body. So put it where you want it, pin it on, and stitch from this corner around to this side. But leave it open so that you can work stuffing inside of that head. And when you're happy with how it's stuffed, finish sewing that shut. Okay, so I have my head tacked on. I just use scrap yarn. Now I'm gonna sew to the body, but I'm gonna try and push my needle down deep enough that I'm catching the inner body, not the feather body. It's a lot easier to do when you're not trying to hold it, you know, to get a good camera angle. But I'm kind of backtracking and overlapping my stitches so that I can really dig down deep and grab that inner body. You don't want it to look sloppy, but you're also going to cover it in a future step. So it's okay if your seam shows, because we do still have this piece to put on. So I'm just going to keep working around the neck, and when I get to here, I'm going to stuff it until I like the way it looks. And then I'm going to finish stitching up, and then I'll be back. Now we have the 3 feather wide triangle that we made and the 4 feather wide triangle that we made. I did not weave in these long tails on the ends of these 2 pieces because we are going to use those to sew our tail pieces together. So I am going to weave this one in. I'm just going to run it right down through here. Well, maybe I won't. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do for my tail is stitch these pieces together. And I did the tail this way so that it had some structure, like it wasn't just a floppy tail. So what I did, and what we're going to do right now, is this 4th feather on the end. We're going to put wrong sides together. So this is my 3rd feather of the 3 wide feather triangle. wrong sides together, that 4 wide triangle, we're going to fold that last feather in half over the edge of the 3 wide one. Like a sandwich. And we're going to use these tails we left, and we're going to stitch through all of those layers. Try and keep your stitches neat into the end, because these ones, not necessarily visible, but they could be if you didn't keep it neat and towards the seam here, towards the base. So I'm just going to weave that in. I'm going to sew along the bottom as far as this one will let me, and still leave me space to tie it nicely and weave my end in. All right, that's good for this one. And now I'm going to tie this end in. And for now, I will just push it up in between my wrong side rows, and I will stitch that in a minute. I'm going to turn it so I can do the same with this side. So I'm going to take this end, and this end should be long enough to also sew it to the body. If you didn't leave yours that way, just sew it together and start a new string. No big deal. So, because this end is the one that's on my 3 wide feather, I'm going to go ahead and push it right through the middle of that 4 wide feather. And then I'm going to fold it and sandwich it over. Now I'm just going to keep working back and forth through all of those layers and making sure it stays snug. I want to get all of those layers. I don't want anything coming apart. And then I will work this little space that the other tail didn't cover. All right. And you're just going to work your way from one end to the other, trying to hold that place that you selected for your tail. I'm going to try and be mindful of these feathers that are already part, like the body feathers. You don't want to sew any down folded over. Okay, check it, make sure you like it, it's where you want it, it looks how you want it, didn't mess up any feathers, and then stitch it in. You can go back across if You're going to use this for a kid's toy with sewn in eyes, not button eyes, and or a dog toy. You're going to want to do a thick seam all the way across. I'm just going to tie that knot and then push my needle through and bury that tail in the stuffing and then snip it so that it slings back down in there. I'm going to open my tail up, weave in whatever ends I have left, and then move on to the wing. Okay, so now we're going to work on sewing these pieces together. So I have 2 of my 3 feather pieces, 1 of my 2 feather pieces, and then 1 of those 4 feather wide pieces. And they all sew together to make this. And then we will do a single crochet picot stitch around the edge, and that will become the wing. So we're going to start by weaving in all of these ends. So as you read in the directions towards the beginning, I said that I used 3 colors of yarn for this chicken. I used the solid gray for the inner body and the head. I used this suede shoes for the body, the feather body. And this one was sand dune, and it's what I'm using for my wings and my neck feathers, which is why it looks a little bit different. This is just pinned there. I'll show you how to sew it on in a minute, but that's why it looks different. So it has a darker gray, a darker brown, and a darker white. I just wanted these pieces to kind of show better instead of blend in. So I'm going to take my string and I'm going to use my yarn needle. And I like doing it in the pieces instead of trying to like slip stitch down and like work a piece and then add some. This is less confusing. It's a little more work, maybe, depending on what you consider worse effort, I guess. But you can control a little bit better like where colors are. So if I wanted to try and make my wings look more similar, I could make sure that I pull through to get more gray. I'm not that concerned about it. I've really made a lot of chickens lately, making sure that this pattern was ready to go out. So I'm going to leave mine tan and gray. So I'm going to turn them over, figure out about where I want them. So the top of this feather will go in between the 2 end feathers. And I'm just going to pull my string through, or just to tie it. And then I will weave this end in to these pieces later. Right now I'm just going to try and keep it lined up. So the tip of this feather will be between the opposite end feathers. The center here will be between the center feathers. And I'm just going to go through these bars. Working back and forth. And when I get back down to this end, I'm just going to make sure everything's lined up before I tie it off. I'm going to do the same thing I did down here. I'm just going to make sure it's secure, tie a knot, snip it. I will weave this in later. That's what it looks like once you stitch those bars together. So from the front, now you're going to do the 2-piece in the center. Okay, so the corner of this 2-row leaf will go into the center of the first edge feather. Then I will hold them and line them up and just run the strings through the bars like I did the other ones. Okay, so this is what I have. I sewed them together. Actually look a little crooked, I'm not sure why. It's not going to matter in a second here. So we have 4 corner edges. This one is stitched down to the center of this first leaf. So I'm not too worried about that one. But we are going to tack these 3 corners together, or tie them together. After you've made this chicken and like your next time through and you kind of know what's going where, you can save some of your tails from these corner edges and use those to do this part. But for the sake of this video and these tutorials, I wanted to try and keep it like clean and like minimum tails so there was as little confusion as possible. So I'm just going to pick up that corner stitch in all 3 of these. So I just strung it through, all going from the front through to the back. I'm just going to tie them together, leaving enough tail on either end, both sides there, to weave them in. So I just knotted it. And now that's what this side looks like. I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to get that top of that double crochet from these feathers. So I'm skipping this 2-row one, going right into the next 3-row one, and then the 4-row. I'm just going to tie a regular knot. So you might have to pull this feather out and kind of arrange it. But now, once I weave these ends in, I am ready to do my picot stitch around. Okay, so I have my 2 feathers. I'm just gonna pick one, grab my yarn. I'm going to attach it. So here's my leaf. These 3 rows are going to be the front of the wing that goes to the front of the body. So I'm going to start up here where I tied my knot to get all of those corners joined together. I'm going to attach my yarn. Chain 1, single crochet in the same, picot stitch, and then I'm going to find the next stitch area. They kind of show themselves, so we know from previous chicken parts that we do 2 single crochet in the top right side of the feather, 1 in the center, 2 on the left side, and 1 in between. It's going to stay that way doing this part too. So I started in that corner, which I'm going to consider the in-between, like if I was doing in-between wings. Now I'm going to start in this next feather part that kind of turns to the side. And I'm going to do 2 single crochet across that right side of the leaf or feather. And every other single crochet, I'm going to picot stitch. And I'm just doing this because I think it makes it look more finished. And I think it helps hide that like harsh line of pieces. So now I'm going to go in between the feathers, to the top of the next feather, and do a picot stitch with that single crochet. So I'm just going to keep working around this feather just like that, all the way around to this edge, this other edge where we tied it together. Okay, so I made it from where we knotted around the front piece of the wing to the other place where we knotted, and I left a long tail, and this is what I will sew it to the body with. Now you need to do the same thing for this wing. So when you place your wing, you're going to want to place it on an angle where the wing tip points up towards that tail. And you're going to want the front of the wing kind of in line with the back of the neck. And then you can just pin it with something. Or put your hook in it. Anything to just hold it where you want it. And then using the long tail we left, make sure you have the placement where you want it. And then just start going through the single crochets and picots you made, like this base here of those stitches, not the feathers, the stitches that we made here. You're just going to go in, try and go down deep enough that you're hitting the body, the inner body, and then push through. They will be wide stitches, but you can go around it. Okay, and I'm just going to keep working around, making sure that my wing is not sliding in a way that moves it so much that it's not where I want it. This wing blends in a lot, so it's probably kind of hard to see in the video. I'm just going to keep holding it in place where I want it, then going in with my needle to the inner body and then pushing up. See, it's still about 1 inch wide. So I've sewn from the corner of the wing where this end was from our single crochet picot stitches. Use that tail and I've come all the way around back to this other side. Now you can go down into that wing and just come up in a few random places and tack it throughout, as much or as little as you want it to be in place. So now I'm up at the tip of one of those wings. I'm going all the way to the inner body and just coming up. Now I'm going to remove the things I put in there to hold it. And I'm going to look it over and see if I like it. I'm going to do some stitches down here, but I'm way up here. So I'm just going to work my way in and out, grabbing little stitches and pinning them in place. Tail poking out. I've made my way all the way back around to where I started. I'm going to make sure I like it. Didn't move my placement. When I'm happy with it, I'm going to tie this off. Okay, so now we're going to take the tail from our 4 feather piece that had the picot stitches for our neck, and we're going to find how we want that. This is the feather, the front most long feather. You want to make sure you cover up your neck seam. And then pin that in place. Make sure it comes down far enough on your neck to cover your seams. Now starting in the back, because that's where your tail is, you're going to go through both layers of the edge feathers. And you're going to run it right through the back of the neck, out the front, making sure that you've got that front piece right where you want it. So check your back. Make sure you're where you want to be. Check your front, make sure you're centered. And then just work. In these back and forth rows, stitching down the back of the neck. And then here's where I came out. That's where I'm going to go in. And I'm going to push all the way through to the back of that neck. Thick batting. Doesn't want to let go. There we go. Start back into the back of the neck. And I'm going to hook those feathers and kind of make sure they stay together. Check your placement as you go along so you don't sew it in the wrong spot. And then just push through and come out somewhere else, like this side of the neck. And you're just going to keep weaving back and forth through the neck, and that will help hold that batting up into the head of the chicken. Just keep working around, catching these gaps where you see them, so that it all stays up nice and tight. Once you've got it sewn all the way around, you can fold back a piece of that neck a little bit, tie a knot, and then bury your end as you have been. I'm going to lift that feather up and come out the back side of the neck.